and we'll get started. All right. This is week 6. You were at home this week, and you've been working on your case study 12 for the last 2 weeks. And that's what we're here for today. But just as a reminder, you were to this week start on milestone 5 in your projects. I met with my consultancy group on Wednesday for them to get started. I've got a couple of articles. I've got a couple of articles here that I'll share with you. Week 6 that I have put here on our board. One on doing a SWOT analysis. One on doing risk assessment matrix. How to conduct a SWOT analysis. Questions to ask during the analysis, and it explains each of them and then does the matrix for you. I've got this article in there. This will help you when you're doing your risk assessment. I would recommend doing a SWOT analysis as part of that. And then you say to me, well, Dale, what is a risk assessment? I've got a good one here. It has 4 levels rather than high, medium, and low. It's got 4, but you can adapt it, and there's your probability, and there's your matrix. I've included both of these in this week's Blackboard, as you can see. Let me close that. As you can see, I have put both of those on our Blackboard for week 6. If you need some help, I use those with my consultancy group. I don't know if you have met with your consultancy chairperson and gone over this or not. I went over this week with mine. And so I'll share those materials with you. Again, I'm a little more directed. I meet with my group and I tell them what I want them to do. I know I'm not supposed to do that, but they seem to want that. The other thing besides milestone 5, let's look at milestone 5 quickly. Develop a risk assessment based on the initial summary of anticipated risk associated with your consulting project. Risks need to be analyzed as high, medium, and low. That's why I said that that matrix that I showed you has 4 levels. The criteria need to be documented. For high and medium levels of risk, a mitigation program needs to be outlined. So that's your task that for this semester, your milestone 5. And I've given you some materials to help you with those. And then you have your 3 projects. And as a reminder, what they are, your cultural change project. Again, I've got those under course overview, course materials. And here are your directions for each of those. That's the cultural change project. Your competency project and your personal change project. And again, you can find all of those under course overview again. And then when you click on course overview, come down to course content and go to week 6. And you will find all those documents, just like I showed you. So that's where you should be in terms of working on those projects. All right, questions for me about milestones, about milestone 5 or your 3 projects. I hope you've looked over those this week. If you have any questions, now's the time.
I would like to ask Dr. Lamb on the personal change project.
Yes.
It has like 3 different due dates on it. And so when I was looking,
as I told you, everything's due by the end of the semester. So don't worry about dates.
Well, what I'm asking is when we get ready to write that up, like I was thinking, whatever I want to do on that first due date, can I just put on there when I'm going to do it, when I'll do the second, and when I'll do the
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, this is you're self-directed in this, and you can do those things. But in terms of the overall, just pace yourself so that by the end of the semester it's done.
Okay.
Again, that's part of the learning. But yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
I'm guessing that was Jackie. I can't.
Yeah, this is Jackie.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
There you are. All right. Okay. Good question. All right. All right. So we're ready to start with case study 12. Hold 1 second. I'm back. She's hard to deal with. She's deaf. All right. Case study 12, resistance to change. Med Dev. Who's going to start us off this morning? Who's going to start with the presentation? Let's dive right in. Who's going to start?
Sarah's group.
Sarah's group. So Sarah, you going to present the PowerPoint?
Actually, Keisha's going to.
Keisha, all right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So Keisha, if you'll claim host.
Access my screen. Dr. Lamb,
Yeah.
have you given me access to my screen?
Yeah. There should be a little pop-up box that says claim host.
Can you see my screen? I have
No,
it.
we can still see Dr. Lamb's screen.
Right, I think he has to accept my screen. Dr. Lamb, is there something I need to click or do you have to?
Yes, you should have a, you should have a, when I'm going to reclaim host and I'm going to make you host again. There should be a pop-up box where you can claim host.
Yeah, it says you're the host now at the top.
Is it under view options? Because I haven't gotten a pop-up box that says
You have a,
Lamb screen.
all right, go to your little dashboard that pops up.
This will stop.
And go to more and see if it gives you the chance, opportunity to claim host. If not, go to participants. There you go.
Okay, you all see it now?
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
So this is our case today presentation on resistance to change from Keisha, Chelsea, James, and Sarah. Our first slide is on background by James.
Good morning, everyone. Everybody.
Good morning.
Background real quick. Michael Zucker, the global
We're having a lot of difficulty
in the
hearing.
medical device industry. Hello? Huh?
Yeah, you sound
Yes.
distorted.
I sound what?
Distorted.
Distorted.
Okay, let me see if I can get to the, let me go to.
Just hold your phone differently, because when you said good morning, you were clear.
How about now?
Clear.
The beeping.
Is this better?
It's better, but that beeping noise in the back.
Huh?
The beeping noise.
How about now?
Good to go.
All right, good. All right, like I was saying, background real quick. CEO Michael Zucker started MedDev, the global leader in the medical device industry, out of his garage while completing high school. The headquarters was built in 1977 and located in northern Nebraska. Gary Franks is the chief financial officer, CFO. Tom is the chief information officer, CIO. And Anita Campos is the internal consultant hired to support the organization development consultant, newly hired to support the enterprise resource planning project, the ERP. This project is the largest capital investment project the company has undertaken in its history. MedDev was facing pressures from global competitors and new entrants. Let's see.
As we looked at the article, we discussed it multiple times as a group and went back and forth about what we felt the problem would be. And what we feel is that there's an overuse of positional power rather than personal power, the power of influence, with a lack of clarification of who the decision makers are. This is creating a lack of buy-in from staff as they are not being included in the planning process and are not sure who is truly leading this process. The secondary problems present are that there's a lack of common vision. The CFO and CIO are acting as the major change agents when that power actually belongs to the CEO and originator of the company, Michael Zucker. There are lackluster efforts to form rapport. MedDev lacks a good communication across the board, which causes lack of insight into our systems. There's rapid growth, and that caused external pricing problems. And another secondary problem is that they still use subpar IT systems.
Okay, alternate solutions. One, clarify who the decision makers are. A united vision for the company. Develop effective methods to communicate decisions made throughout the company. Develop ways to overcome assumptions that staff have about the plan. Ensure all conflicts of interest. Keep going. Mode. Okay. Streamline the decision-making process to the appropriate leader and division within the company. Create a vehicle that ensures shared decision-making and collaboration are allowed at all levels. Create an effective cost management system. Update current IT systems to more modern IT systems.
Preferred alternative. Create and communicate a united vision for the company. And create a vehicle that ensures shared decision making and collaboration are allowed. Risk to preferred solutions. Some employers may not buy into the vision and leave the organization. In the process of creating the vehicle, it could slow down implementation. And then, of course, with change, conflict could arise, could increase in storming through the process.
Okay, so to kind of point back to the central problem, and when we were looking at our plan, we really felt like there were some concerns on how they wanted to move forward with a project that had been an old project, and now they were ready to restart it, and you have folks that didn't feel comfortable with how it went the first go around and are kind of skeptical of whether it's going to work this go around. So when we really looked at determining how to move forward and make it work this time, it was important to, number one, figure out who the decision makers were, because they are really going to have to drive the process and the change. And for those individuals who are either digging in their heels or just kind of lackluster in their thought, yeah, okay, if you say this is going to work, then fine. They really have to get the buy-in. And so you've got this individual that's been hired, and she reports to someone else who reports to another person. And so you've got these people that have some political push or some industry push. So we really talked a lot about who the decision makers are. And number one, asking the question, is there a board? Or is it the CEO? And talking with whoever, as this individual has come in and been hired, about making sure that if she's got the CFO or the CIO telling her these are the things we want to do, making sure that it's not something that's going to turn around and be trumped by the CEO or by the board or by whoever is actually the decision maker. So that would be our number one thing that we would want to recommend and put in place, is determining who's in charge. And if there isn't a board, we would recommend that there be some sort of decision-making process. Whether there's a creation of a board, or we talk with the CEO about what he wants to see as the drivers for decision. Once we know who's going to be at the table to push the change, we would want to develop the scope and make sure all staff involved are a part of the process. And not just looking at what is in scope, but what's out of scope, because sometimes you need to clarify what you're not going to do and compare it to that previous project that was in place. Because some of it may be same thing, some of it may be different, and really clarifying for those that, so that those that were a part of the process the first go around won't think it's just a repeat if things are different, so that we can make sure that people aren't kind of stuck in the past. And we would utilize that opportunity to focus on getting buy-in from those individuals. And then thirdly, we would define roles within the project. So who's going to do what, who gets to decide and sign off on specific aspects of the project, and how are we going to make decisions about moving to each milestone. In order to do that, we would, or once we kind of know where we're headed, we would want to assess the current situation in the market and use the SWOT analysis, just like you, Dr. Lamb, discussed a minute ago. So here's an example. And on the right-hand side are some questions that we could ask around each of the 4 areas to look at strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, and really how to keep the focus on the future versus being stuck in the past. And it's going to be imperative that we do this so that people who are stuck on wanting to change do not stay in the mode of, well, we tried this before, or this didn't work, or what's not going to work, but to really be able to focus on how we can just keep moving forward. So we would use that SWOT analysis first. Then we would complete a cost benefits analysis of where we want to go. So really taking the strengths and the opportunities from the SWOT analysis and look at what would be the benefits of our plan, what would be the costs, what would kind of the pros and cons of what are we willing to risk in order to move forward, and create a strategic plan with a timeline using a Gantt chart to really identify the specifics of what we want to do, when we would want to do them, and when we would check in to see how they were going, to really have that accountability piece so that this project doesn't just get lost or get kind of stuck. And then we would implement the plan and follow up with staff, all staff at the milestones. This would be able to keep momentum and keep staff involved in the buy-in piece, and make sure those that maybe aren't doing something related to the project or to the plan, that we are communicating with them at least of the progress along the way. And that is it. Do you have any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Can you go back to me for your slide where you started your recommendations?
Mm-hmm.
Is this
Keep
the
going.
slide you're referring to?
Keep going. The first, yeah,
Right.
that one.
All right, next slide. Okay. All right, go back one and we'll stop there for a moment. I hope my plan, and hope's not a plan, my plan in coupling this case study with the start of milestone 5 is that you would, and you folks picked up on it very quickly, as I went over the SWOT earlier this morning. Case study 12 is kind of a microcosm, or is kind of the launch of your milestone 5, because you will do many things in your consultancy milestone 5 that you did in this case study. So make sure that you go back to this particular slide. This is kind of your roadmap for milestone 5, including your SWOT analysis on the next page. And so if you've done this, and that was my hope, or my plan, was once you've done this, milestone 5 will come into focus for you. And this is an excellent slide. This one and the next one are the 2 slides you need to refer back to. If you have questions, or if you get stuck, or if you're not sure where you're going with your milestone 5, this is it right here. And that's why I planned it so that you would do 12 on the week that we started on milestone 5 and looked at SWOT analysis. And you have incorporated that so that you get an A+ today. Y'all figured that out.
Yay.
Yay. Yay. I love it when a plan comes together. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But seriously, if you look at these bullets and you look at the next one, this should be your template for how you do your milestone 5. And that was the whole idea. All right, I have a couple questions for you. How would you feel as hired as a consultant and you come in to run a project and you find out that it's a retread project? It's already failed one time. Would you think that that would be something that you would need to know up front as a consultant?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I can relate to a problem the state's going through right now in a previous role, where they're trying to implement a technology program that's like 20 years old, literally. I mean, it's been happening for 20, 25 years, and they won't cut their losses because of political reasons, and they just keep trying to make this thing work, and it's just, they need to be done with sunk costs and move on. And so everybody is in that lackluster, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're still dealing with this, like it's never going to happen mode.
Well, why do you think that is?
Because they've seen failure and they don't have faith that it's going to be any different.
All right. But why do you think that the decision makers are continuing trying to push technology that's 25 years old?
Because they look at how much money they put into it and whatever political backing has pushed for it, and they don't want to.
That's exactly it. But it's more. It's more of, instead of how much money we put in it. Yes, that's a factor. But who's getting the money? That's why it's continuing to be pushed.
Yep, exactly.
that's the whole point. Enterprise when we talk about computers and computer systems and technology, enterprise is usually what's referred to in layman's terms as hardware. And then you have your software, and so information technology comprises both of those, both the actual hardware platform that you're using and then the software that runs on it. And generally what happens is, as IBM found out, you lose money on the hardware side. You make your money back on the software side. And you keep selling updates, but you own your software. But what IBM didn't realize is you got to update your hardware, your platforms, the enterprise side on a regular basis. And when they couldn't do that or didn't understand the importance of doing that, that's when IBM crashed. That's why they are no longer in the PC business, and why they lost and had to close the Charlotte facility, and multiple reasons why. But they didn't have government contracts, and so what enterprise people have figured out is we need government contracts. We don't need to spend our money on developing better technology. We need to spend our money on paying politicians so they'll continue to buy outdated hardware so that we can continue to sell them the software as well. And so what you find in a lot of organizations, especially if they're politicized organizations, is that we continue to try to retread and hold on because it's the hardware that we're trying to support, and even though it may be out of date, we're trying to support that. I felt like there was some of that in this case. They were going to probably go back to their old enterprise platform and try to revive this thing. And I'm guessing the reason why is they felt like we've already made this investment. To Sarah's point, we've already made this investment in the hardware. We got to figure out some way to use it. And even though it's out of date and no longer relevant, we bought it, we got to keep it, kind of thing. Got to figure out some way to use it. And so there's a degree of that in this case study as well. And so as a consultant, it's very important to know if this is a retread project and all the baggage that comes with it, rather than let's go find, here's our problem, let's go find the best solutions. They've already got the solution, they're just hunting the problem. That's never good from a business sense. And so just my take on this case, this one is kind of doomed to failure again, not from the organizational side in terms of a strategic plan. I mean, you outlaid the things you need to do, but unfortunately, in a case like this, the best laid plans sometimes go awry because you're saddled with hardware that's several years old in this case, or in the enterprise side of the business. What should we do? What should we do about that if we're hired into a situation like this, especially if we didn't know that it was a retread project? What should maybe we add into this?
Maybe assessing or going back to the table with the people in charge to assess whether moving forward is even the right decision.
That's part of it. Yes, it's moving forward with this particular platform. What they're trying to do. My understanding of this case is they're trying to put in basically an information technology system into their business that would keep track of everything in their business. One of the assessments is obviously we need to do that. But the question is, do we need to do it with this particular enterprise platform? Is this up to date enough? Is it compatible with with current market software, is this the right thing to do going forward? Now, nobody wants to hear about we already bought it one time, we got to buy it again kind of thing. But if it's not relevant, if there's not software, if it was like IBM that was designing one-off, their machines ran their one-off operating system, and they couldn't buy you couldn't buy the newest, most modern software because they didn't keep their hardware up to date. When IBM first started installing business systems, it ran on their operating system. And when it wasn't a standardized platform like Microsoft, it was an OS, it was an IBM system. And when the new software came out and updates, it didn't work on because it wasn't written in there. They had patents on and copyrights on their operating system. They wouldn't give those out to people to write new software. People wrote the new software on a common platform of Microsoft, a DOS system. And so the new software, whenever it came out, wouldn't work on the IBM machines, on their servers. And so according to how old, their initial investment in the enterprise side, the hardware side was, that would be something that I would want to know. How old is this equipment? Does it run, what operating system does it use? I know I'm down kind of in the weeds here, but this ultimately may determine the success or failure of this rollout. Is we've got this old hardware. Does the newest software work on it? Is it something that we can update regularly? Or will we be back in the same problem 2 or 3 years? If we do have a successful implementation, will we have to do it again in 2 or 3 years because we can't just update the software? Will we have to go back through this process again in 2 or 3 years? How demoralizing is that to your employees? We just spent 2 years on this big rollout. Now we got to basically do it again. It's like we have to reinvent the wheel every 2 or 3 years. Or does this platform allow us to just do updates and keep moving and do a little staff development, a little ongoing continuous improvement staff development as we go? Or do we basically have to roll out a new product every 2 or 3 years? And that's what killed IBM. You had to do a new product launch every time something came out, rather than just doing an update. You notice one thing is it's aggravating, but you notice one thing about Microsoft is they do automatic updates. Your computer will do those, or you can set it where you do them on your own. But you notice you don't have to relearn a whole new operating system very often. And even when they go from Windows 7 to Windows XP to Windows 10, there's always updates. There's always a way to do that. And you're still working off the basic system. And so you're just updating your skills along the way. Does this system that they bought allow for that? If it doesn't, you're not going to have very much long-term success, I'm afraid. I just think of it from the technology side as somebody who used to have to do these kinds of things in an organization. And it's demoralizing. My career arc tracks a 32-year implementation into information systems in public schools. And I can tell you, we had to switch software or platforms 3 times. And every time we lost more people. And we eventually settled upon a group that was able to do the updates. But we stuck with people longer than we should have because they were paying politicians. They were to continue with them. As Sarah was talking about, and we wouldn't let it go, and we finally moved over to a common platform where we could just do updates like Microsoft, and we've done much better with our information technology in the last 10 years because we finally switched to a company that didn't have a proprietary system, that used a common system, and updates could be done on a regular basis without having to start all over again. And so the best planning in the world, you can't overcome bad technology. That's one of the lesson takeaways from this case study as well. yes, you've done a good job. You've tied your SWOT analysis. You understood how to do your risk assessment, those things. But overarching all of that is in the world of technology today, and we live in a technology society. You can't overcome bad hardware. You just can't. My suspicion is the reason why this one failed before is bad hardware. I actually have a relative who does this for a living, who works in the hospital industry and goes in and works for GE that goes in and installs these kinds of systems. And basically what they do is they go in and replace these proprietary systems with a common platform from GE, which utilizes a common language and a common software platform where it can be updated. And that's what she does for a living. And she will tell you that there's a lot of initial resistance because they've had to change so many times and start something new. But once they get GE's software in, get their hardware in, and then establish their software, that it goes really well because they just do updates and they just do them through the computer rather than having to come in and replace equipment and take the servers down and put new software on the servers. They can do it automatically, and that's the big advantage of going with GE's medical software and their hardware, their enterprise platform. Now, on a more local basis, Gardner Webb uses Web Connect and Blackboard. It is a one-off, and it's exactly the problem. You notice that they had to take it down and work on it all the time, and it's not very good, and it causes us a lot of problems. But because we already have the hardware that runs it, we're reluctant because of finances to buy the new hardware that would run common platforms that could be updated automatically, where you don't have to take your servers down, and every time the servers come back up, we have all kind of issues and problems. That's what we're talking about. So you can't ignore the hardware and the software side of this strategic plan to move over. All right, move on through your slides. There we go. One more slide. All right, go back. Okay. Come on. Oh, right here. Here we go. You ask the appropriate questions here. Is there a board? Is it the CEO? Who the decision makers are? Excellent. You need to determine who those are. Who do you think the decision makers were in this case?
Decision maker is the CEO. He's just not present in the decision making process.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, from a consultancy side, we talked about the hardware side. I bored you with that. From the consultancy side, that's your central problem right there. You have identified your central problem. Excellent. Always identify your central. There's two central problems in this one. Two central problems are this one. The CEO is the decision maker and he's not involved in any way. Always bad. And two, it's a hardware, software problem. That's your second central problem. Anytime that you're trying to do, it's kind of like content and process. The process here in their organization is the decision maker's not involved in the day-to-day. That's a problem. Now that's the process side. On the content side, you're trying to, you're using, the content is we're trying to roll out new software, new hardware. And so I've just gone, belabored you with that, the problem on that side. The central problem on that side is it's a retread. You're probably trying to use outdated hardware, but you've already invested in it one time and you're going to try to make it work, damn the torpedoes. That's always bad organization. You're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. That's the content side of your central problem. The process side is you know, the person that's in charge is not involved in the process. That's never going to go well. That's a recipe for disaster. That would, you know, even back years ago when the technology was new and fresh and cutting edge, this project failed because of the lack of involvement from the CEO. So again, that's the first problem you've got to address. And then, you know, and once you've addressed that problem, the next problem again is to sit down and ask, is this still a viable rollout? I mean, are we, you know, are we, you know, are we tilting windmills here, for lack of a better analogy? You know, if we are successful in rolling this thing out, will it then work? See that there's two sides to that coin. Oh, we've successfully implemented this, but then when we get it successfully implemented, well, it doesn't work. It doesn't do what we want to do. And in many ways, that's worse than not getting it rolled out at all. What happens in organizations where you do a rollout and and everybody buys in and makes the change and you go to something new, but it's not better? It A, doesn't meet our needs, or B, doesn't work regularly. What happens to the organization then?
Morale goes down the drain because everybody's frustrated.
Exactly. What's going to be your chance of ever rolling anything else out that's new?
Little to none.
Little to none. That's exactly right. So sometimes not being successful in the short term actually allows you maybe to be successful in the long term when you get something that's more in terms of content, what you're actually trying to roll out. Maybe not rolling it out the first time was actually a good thing. If you got it rolled out and it didn't work, that's a whole lot worse than not getting it rolled out at all. So my point is, as a consultant, you'd want to know that something has failed the first time and that it's a retread, but also it's good news in that it wasn't the product itself that failed, it was the rollout of the product. We can work on that end, but we also need to do an assessment, is the product still viable? Because we don't want to go through the time and trouble of you know, the strategic planning that goes on and the change management that goes on to get this new product in, and then it doesn't work. So we're going to have to add to our duties some sort of an assessment of the actual product that we're trying to roll out. Remember, everything has content and process. Don't forget that. You focus very well on the actual process, but you're going to also need to, if you're going to be a successful consultant, you've got to focus on the content. Are we implementing the best practices or the best, you know, I'll use the best practices. Is this the best stuff? Is this the best solution to our problem? Or do we just have this and we're going to try to make it work? Are we a solution hunting a problem? And what we have doesn't actually fit our problem, but we've already paid for it. There's got to be some of that assessment in there as well on a retread project. We have to go back and look at, this was relevant 5 years ago in our industry when we initially purchased this. Is it still relevant to our industry? So don't forget both sides when you're doing strategic planning, when you're doing change management. Don't forget there's content and process. The process that you put them through, you put yourself through and the company through in terms of developing a strategic plan, which includes how to change from what you were doing to what you're doing, again, the training and the education that goes along with that. But you also need to assess the actual product that you're trying to install, that you're trying to get adopted in the change process. We're changing from the old software and hardware to the new. We need to assess the new to make sure it is the new and it does do what we want it to do. Don't forget that piece of it.
Last question. It would also, within the case study, it said that the CEO had dual interests. Like he was CEO of the company and he also had his hands in another component of it. Does that have anything to do with this?
Yes. when I say it's a solution hunting a problem, he owned an interest in that company that was providing the hardware software. Would be,
so there was a political tie to that as well.
Which is
again, that's what's known as a solution hunting a problem. We have this product over here that this company that I have a vested interest in. We have this product. Let's figure out how to make it, how to make it work in our company, so I can make money coming and going.
Yeah, that's a conflict of interest.
There is. That's exactly right.
Which is why we put that somewhere in the beginning about finding the conflict of interest.
Yes, I picked up on that. Yes, that's exactly what that means. That's when I refer to a solution hunting a problem, or we have this stuff over here. How can we make it work? Instead of we have this problem, let's go find something that fixes it. When you do it backwards, that rarely works as well. I tell the story, and I'll give you the short version. I was in an organization one time, and we had a new CEO come in, and he had a pet program. He had a solution, and he wanted it, and he said this will fix everybody's problem. The problem with that is his solution was his program and solution was a good program, but it only fit less than 20% of the organization. But he wanted everybody to do it because he had a vested interest in it, and an actual monetary interest in that organization, in that company that was providing that program. And so if he'd come in and said, let's assess where this will work, that would have been one thing, but he's blanket. This will work for everybody. We've got, in this organization, we've got 160 branches in this organization. 160 branches in this organization. This will work for all 160 of them, when in fact it would probably work for only 20 or 30. But he had vested interest. And so people were trying to figure out, how can I make this work in my situation? This has nothing to do with me.
And I've seen that happen too with different groups. It's not even a vested interest financially, but that they've used that program in a previous role and it works for the financial side. So they want to just use it, but it doesn't work for the clinical side, let's say, or the other group. And then they're having issues.
Many times leaders, even consultants, they've had success with a particular program or a particular product, and that's all they know, or that's all they're comfortable with. We call them one-trick ponies in the business. That's the only thing they know. That's the only thing they're comfortable with. That's the only thing they've ever had real marketable success with. And so that's what they're going to bring, whether it fits the situation or not. Whether in our business we call that goodness of fit. Where there's a goodness of fit or not, it's immaterial. This will work. I've had seen it work before, but and so one of the things that I ask students to do is do a little journey of self-discovery, profile your own organization. And the reason why I have students do that is, if you know who you are and what your organization is, you have a better, when you have done a needs assessment and you're looking for something to address your most pressing need, and that's what a needs assessment is supposed to tell you, you will know if there's a goodness of fit with that particular program, treatment, or fix with your organization. Yes, it addresses this problem, but does it address it in the context of your organization? It worked with this group, but your group doesn't look anything like that group. It worked in this branch of the organization. Well, this branch doesn't look like anything like that. But yeah, we get a lot of one-trick ponies in business. They've had success with a particular program, and this is all I know, and this is what I'm comfortable with. This will work. I've seen it work. Well, did it work in a similar situation for a similar problem? Immaterial. This will work. And that's why you have to do a needs assessment to figure out what your need is. And then you look for, best practices, but you look for something that's worked in a situation that looks like yours. That's called goodness of fit. Yeah, this worked, but it worked in the banking industry. Well, we're in the mortgage industry. That's close enough. It'll work for us. No, not necessarily. For you school people, this program worked great in elementary school, but we're a high school. For those that are in nonprofits, yeah, this worked really well in an empowered board situation where they could actually levy taxes or develop or generate their own revenue. But the program won't work where you're dependent upon outside funding. Those kinds of things matter. The structure of your organization matters when you're looking for a program, treatment, or a fix. When you're looking, when you're developing a strategic plan to address a need in your organization or a problem or to make a change in your organization, if you're looking for something that's worked somewhere else, make sure that somewhere else looks like you. One of the problems that we get into in a lot of state governmental agencies is they're dependent upon outside funding sources. Somebody else has to give them money, some taxing or revenue authority. And many times there are strings attached. I think that's what Sarah's been describing this morning. These governmental agencies, there's strings attached because they have constituents that have been funding their campaigns that, we have this product, we need for you to push this product. Well, that product doesn't work. Well, it doesn't matter. I need to sell this stuff. I've got it in the warehouse. And so you got to look at content and process. Process is the strategic planning, change management. You got to look on the content side as well. Is what we're trying to change to viable? Does it fit our problem? Is there a goodness of fit? Did we go find something and then that we liked and then try to figure out how to make it work? The solution hunting a problem. Or is this a one-trick pony? This works somewhere else for one of our leaders in our organization or for the consultant, and that's all they know. When hiring a consultant, one of the things that I would be looking for, and I have looked for, is show me the things that you've done in the past that have been successful. If it's all the same thing, I'm not interested in them, because the best bet is guess what they're going to say my organization needs? That one thing. What I would be looking for is a portfolio of different products, programs, treatments, fixes. I'd be looking for a variety of those that fit the situation rather than, this fixes everything. Some people call that the WD-40 solution. WD-40 fixes everything. The duct tape solution. No, not appropriate in every case. When you read these articles and do the reading, you see all these analogies that they make. The old joke, this cures everything from baldness to gout. No, there's few products on the market that do that. Most things are, specific to industries and specific to particular problems. One of the things that GE does, and get back to this case, when they come in and install their hardware and they install their basic platform, they send developers, SQL developers, who sit there and with the actual workers, and they customize and build. SQL developers build reports through what's known as cubes, and they sit there and they ask you what kind of data do you need, what information do you need, at what points in the organization, what do those people need, and they sit down with those people and they develop custom reports that pull all that data together. They don't just have to sit and do data mining all the time. All this data is in this system now. What are we going to do now? Well, at every terminal, the person that sits there, they sit down with them. What do you need to know? Well, I need to know these 5 things. Well, they put those 5 things in the cube, and they put a button on the dashboard where you put a button and it gives you real-time information. It builds that report for you in real time. That's the value of going with their system is it's customizable to your particular situation and to different points. Everybody in the organization doesn't need the same information. That's one of the big drawbacks with many computer systems, enterprise systems, and the software is it gives you good information, but it gives you at one point in the organization. Different people in the organization need different data points. They need different reports. The beauty of the GE system is it allows for customization at on different floors in the hospital for different nursing needs different information than oncology and so forth. And they're able through that one big system, that enterprise system that has the hardware and the software that holds all the information to individualize different points in the organization to get them the specific information that they need. They don't get a printout that's 40 pages long and have to hunt their one little section on one page. That one little section on one page comes to them automatically.
I'm super interested in hearing what the other group has to say because it's always interesting to see what viewpoint another group of people have on the same issue that you're presenting with. Because I know Tia and I touched bases a little bit at our assistant principals meeting, and we both were confused. So I'm super interested in seeing.
All right, that's a nice way to say move on. All right.
We did talk at AV meeting, Dr. Lamb.
All right.
It's so nice. I'm gonna mute my little mic.
All right, we're back to me. All right, who's next?
Okay, I'll pull it up. This is Jackie.
Okay.
Okay. Do I click share screen?
Yes. There you go.
Okay, Dr. Lamb. This is from Jackie, Tracy, and Tia. Some of the background information is exactly the same things that they said. I don't know if you want me to.
No, move on.
Okay, so basically it's the same thing that that the other group said. The only thing is that we added according to an audit firm, there needs to be. Okay, I can't quite read that. Let me.
According to an audit firm, there needs to be a focus on organizational risk and change management.
Yes, sir. And that's what that was according to the audit firm. So that's the only thing that we had different. We did add some of the key players because this was a different case study, kind of different than we've had before. So we just wanted to break down some of our key players and get an understanding of who all was involved. So the CEO, they talked about the CFO, CEO Michael Zucker, who started in his garage, CFO Gary France. They mentioned the COO, but there was never a name attached to him. The CIO Tom, which was the project director. The CTO was made mention of, but never given a name. And then Anita Campo, change management leader. And then they also mentioned the steering committee made up of vice presidents. So we kept going back and forth trying to figure out who was doing what. And as I said earlier, Tom was the CIO. And so we wanted to break down exactly who was supposed to be the project manager and who was the change management, which was Anita's role. A change manager will work with the project management team to identify, communicate, and effectively manage all aspects relating to how any changes will will ultimately impact all stakeholders, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Dr. Lamb. Then the project management. A project manager works with a project team to plan, communicate, and execute the actual development and implementation itself. So change management is a structured approach to shifting, transitioning individuals, teams, and organizations from a current state to a desired future state. It is a process aimed at helping employees to accept and embrace changes in their current business environment. And we were kind of putting this in there because, like Sarah said earlier, kind of because this project had failed at one point, we kind of wanted to try to understand what her role was. So some change management impact. So when you have change management coming in, you have a strategic, operational, technological, and cultural shifts. Okay, Tracy.
So the central problem is we kind of went back and forth with the central problem. We did feel that there were more than one central problem that was going on here. So we kind of narrowed it down to the organizational structure. MedDev has a lack of strategic leadership. So just giving a little bit of feedback, effective strategic leadership and the responsibility for strategic thinking and decision-making rests at the top of the organization, in particular, the CEO. But other senior management also must make the strategic decisions and create organizational contacts, which can lead to long-term organizational success. So there's so much going on here till you really don't know who's doing what. The secondary problem, as we discussed, we thought that a lack of clear vision and purpose, insufficient resources, lack of staff engagement, ownership, and that's what Sarah and I were talking about in regards to the lack of equipment, being in the 70s per se, facing pricing pressures from competitors. Our alternative solutions, as we discussed, the strategic, one of them was identify and share a clear vision and mission objectives. In regards to operational, recreate an organizational structure that clarifies roles for each person, each member. Technological, update software and hardware, clearly is outdated. And I can't see that second one, so let me see. And then cultural, behavior and attitudes.
If you'll stop right here, just 1 second. This is in a much better way than I tried to explain this. This is content and process right here. And we've got the technology piece right here. You got to make sure you assess that as well. And that's what I was talking about in the break here. Very good.
Preferred solution, we thought that creating an organizational structure that was conducive to the organizational growth and address the organizational risk. And we looked at how in 5 years, they had a 5-year plan, and then for the fact that they tried this before and failed. And then risk to preferred solution, organizational risk, we looked at what were the risks. Loss of revenue, loss of performance, of course, and we talked. Sarah's group talked about that as well. Low morale. These were things that was going to take place based on the restructure. Things that had to take place in order for the organization to move forward to success. Loss of personnel, and then risk of outsourcing, which was under risk to another organization. Some of the recommendations, build awareness, build a community, of course, build competency. There is no competency going on within the organization. Build engagement, acceptance, and then communicate visions and goals. We always go back to the vision and the goal. A lot of times it's misplaced within the organization. working together, meaning listen and learn. Nobody was communicating. Everybody knew that this multi-million-dollar project needed to be taken care of, but nobody was communicating with each other. Training and resources, share history, past and present. That's what we were talking about in regards to Anita, not making her aware that this was something that had already taken place, and we were bringing her on blindsided. Share results and get buy-in. And then bottom-up management, communicate. The bottom-up versus top-down approach, we thought was a good visual to show you. And Tia said it best, when we're discussing or communicating, we want to communicate from the bottom up versus top down. So we want everybody that is involved to feel like they are an important part of the organization, instead of, because I'm a CEO, that I make all of the decisions from the top up. We want to start from the bottom up and to the top down approach, if that makes sense.
Okay, Tia, is Tia on?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I don't know what's going on with my video. This is the second time I've tried it, and I just don't know where it is and why it's not coming up. But as long as you can hear me, I'm here. With the SWOT analysis, we looked at that, and we actually identified some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that were identified based on the case study. So in looking at that, we've highlighted some of the internal factors and the external factors. A few of the strengths that we've identified is that they're an existing company. They're a market leader. They're global. They have product knowledge. They have some preferred lines, and they also have multi-line products. A few of the weaknesses that we've identified, the seamless transition with acquisitions, the technology glitches, communication issues, again, continued education and training. And a few of the opportunities include community awareness, training new leaders, being innovative, trying new technology. The threats, of course, would be competition, technology, doing things the old way, fear of failure, and change. And moving from the SWOT analysis, we wanted to look at the current organizational structure because they identified it in the case study, but we kind of wanted to put it out in black and white so that we can see it. So we know that there are a lot of chiefs. We have the CEO, we have the CIO, Chief Information Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operational Officer, and the Chief Technology Officer. And Anita is this change agent who is actually reporting to the Chief Informational Officer. And then under that, we have all of these VPs that were attending all of the meetings that then reported to the other chiefs. And then under them were the supervisors, and then we have the other workers or employees. So that's the current organizational structure that doesn't seem to be working with this organization right now. So what we've created as a team was we came up with a proposed organizational structure that we wanted to present or recommend, starting with considering a board that would comprise of community members, the company or organization, as well as industry membership. Having the CEO, of course, right under the board. Anita would actually report to the Chief Executive Officer instead of the Chief Informational Officer. And then we have our other chiefs under that with our VPs, the floor managers, and then also the floor supervisors. And the floor supervisors will actually come from the pool of workers who have the experiences on the floor, as well as the floor managers. So that will also give us that information and data we need and that experience of having that bottom-up approach versus the top-down. And then looking at our implementation and action plan, going back to our recommendation, we look at the change management strategy. So we're going to talk about that leadership engagement. When we said we wanted to build engagement, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at our organization alignment with the reorganization of our structure, making sure that communication is key and we're hitting that communication throughout the organization, providing training and support to all staff members, change readiness and sustainment, making sure that we do the assessments that we need and preparing our employees for the changes that need to occur for growth. And of course, having the vision and value definition and kind of starting with that point. And then our implementation and action plan continued. First, we're looking at meeting with all the senior management to review vision, goals, and also the SWOT analysis, and also conducting it with our other employees so that we can get info or input from all stakeholders. And then our next meeting would be meeting with the senior management to define the roles and responsibility of each department in the organizational structure, including the senior management, because we found with this organization, it seems like everybody has a title, but people don't want to do the work. And I don't know if it's because of the lower morale, because of the past failures in the history of the organization, but it's more so, who do I need to report to and what do I really need to be doing? So going back and looking at everybody's roles and responsibilities and being able to clarify and define it for each individual. And then the next meeting, or the third meeting, we will be meeting with the senior management and staff to implement the change readiness assessment, because we realized that it was a recommendation from the last audit that we had, so that we needed to do the change readiness assessment. And here is an example. Here's the change readiness assessment that we will be implementing with the staff. Thank you, Jackie. Mm-hmm. And the last part of our implementation and action plan is we're going to review the readiness assessment with the leadership, and then based on the data, make preparations for organizational change. And then last but not least, revisit the implementation plan to make adjustments as needed. And those are references. Are there any questions? Embrace change.
All right, if you can go back to your slide on your assessment there.
The which is okay.
Which one, Dr. Lamb? I'm sorry.
Where you assess people's ability to change.
Oh yeah, back to the
you change.
It's 19, Jackie.
Yeah, I think it's 19.
There you go. The readiness assessment.
Yeah, all right, go to 20.
Go to 20.
Go to 20. 21.
No, it's on. She had to click on the link. Go to the 19, Jackie. It's the change readiness assessment. Click on the change readiness assessment.
All right, y'all wait a minute. I'm sorry. Give me a minute. Let me see here. There we go. We just found this online when we were looking, since they said they wanted a change assessment.
Good. All right, if you'll scroll on down.
Keep on going?
Yep. Come on down.
Okay, that's as far as I can go.
Okay. All right. All right. So this is an excellent. I wanted to review that again. You went through it so fast, so much. This is an excellent change readiness. We used to call readiness maturity, but we now refer to it as readiness. Your not really your ability to change. It's more of a willingness to change. And so this is a good document. You might want to share that with everybody. This is an excellent assessment. It has all 5 pieces in it. So thank you for sharing that with us. All right, go to slide 17. All right, this is your extra credit question for the day. What is this an example of? What organizational structure is this an example of? We talked about it last time. This is an example of a rational bureaucracy.
Yes, we did talk about it last time. Yes.
This is an example of irrational bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
People, when they hear the word bureaucracy, they all automatically add in a negative connotation. That is not, irrational bureaucracy is not a negative thing. It's a type of organizational structure. There's no value placed to that in terms of it's good or bad. It just is. It is an organizational structure. It is one of many, but it is one of the two that is most widely recognized in business.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, they have all of these roles already in their organization. They just have no structure in them. So when you put them in a structure that looks like this is what would be known as a rational bureaucracy, because everybody in the organization knows who they report to. That's what makes it rational. That's what makes it a bureaucracy. Nobody's kind of out there in a box on their own. Everybody has a direct line of who they're responsible and who they report to. That is the definition of a rational bureaucracy. And as you can see, the problem, the dysfunctions in this company, we've talked about them this morning, but as you can see, they're more organizational. Now, one of the things that we learned from the dot-com boom and bust, and I think most of you, if you weren't old enough to live through it, you're old enough to remember the dot-com boom, where all these venture capitalists put all these money in these technology companies, and then they busted because what they found is the technology will not fix organizational dysfunction. You can't buy an organization in terms of a organizational structure that works well. You can't buy that through just buying technology. Again, there's two sides to it. There's the content side, which is the technology side, but there's the process, the organizational side. And if you don't have a structure where everybody knows what their roles and responsibilities are, who they answer to, clear lines of responsibility, buying software won't help you. Buying technology won't help you. And that's what we learned in the dot-com boom and bust. We had all these very dysfunctional companies that were designing and building all these wonderful software and hardware platforms, but the companies imploded, fell apart, because they didn't have the proper organizational structures. And so the takeaway from today for me, I hope for you too, is you've got to look at both sides. Your primary responsibility as an organizational consultant is to make sure that the organization is operating correctly, properly, in a manner that is conducive to gaining market share and market advantage. You also have to keep an eye on the technology side as well. You know, what are we trying to implement technology-wise? You have to do an assessment of that as well. But, you know, the lessons for this morning is strategic planning and change management only work. You know, there's specific steps you take to do those, and y'all have outlined those this morning. There's good things like your change assessment document. There's wonderful things there, but it all goes back again to we can do all these wonderful assessments. We can work through our strategic plan. We can work through a change management assessment and efforts. But if we have lack of structure in our organization, where people don't know who they report to and they're not held accountable, the chances of success in that organization are slim. It all starts with that mission, vision, but we have to make sure that we know who reports to who. We have to have whatever that structure is. We have to know what it is, and we have to follow that structure. Everybody has to do that. Nobody's above the law kind of thing. Everybody has to know their role and fulfill their role. And so I know that's kind of an overarching theme that should be throughout this entire course is that all these wonderful things that we learn and this knowledge that we get, none of it will work if we have a dysfunctional organizational structure. That kind of has to come first, and you can't ever forget that as a consultant. If you're working in a dysfunctional organization, no matter what you do for them, the results are not going to be there if their organization is dysfunctional in terms of its structure. Who reports to who, who's responsible for what, roles, responsibilities, those kinds of things. And once you've established that, as Jackie, Tracy, and Tia's group has done here, once you establish that structure, then all these other things can then flourish and work. But until you get this structure in, I'm not sure that any of your efforts are going to be successful until you know who reports to who and who does what, where, and why. So this is wonderful. This is a wonderful slide. This is kind of the central problem that you've identified here, their lack of organizational structure. And once you propose and get that structure, then you can start your strategic planning. Then you can start your change process, your change assessment, your readiness to change. Those are the actual technical skills. Those are the things that you need to do. But without this organizational structure, I'm not sure you're going to be very successful. That's kind of my takeaway from this presentation. Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, you folks are demonstrating that you've learned a lot. Wasn't because of me, but that doesn't matter. The important thing is you're learning a lot. You know what you're doing. I'm very pleased with your progress. I'm going to be interested later on this semester to see what your milestone 5 looks like and your projects look like. I think you folks are. I think you're building the blocks. You're building those blocks, which are wonderful. I'm now the host. All right, so share here, share, go back to that. So you're building the blocks to be prepared to do your projects. That's why I told you we wouldn't be in a hurry to get to those yet. Today we kind of introduced milestone 5. But the things that you learned or that you demonstrated to me today are the things that you're going to need to do. This case is most relevant to milestone 5. That's why it was time to do it today when we start looking at milestone 5. So if you have questions, just remember your presentations that you had today, and those should answer most of your questions. I'm always available. You can call or email. I can Zoom with you if you're not. If you need help with your consultancy, I'm always available for milestone 5. But today should be a good launch into your milestone 5. I saw some other things that are going to be relevant to the other projects today. So I was trying to hit on some of those things, keeping those in the back of our minds. That some of the points that I made today are relevant to the other 2 projects. And so I think we're in good shape. Continue to use Perusall, as Dr. Hamilton and I look at it every week, at least one day, sometimes 2 days a week. We look at those things. Again, that's for you. I think it's much more interactive and much better than discussion board. I have to be reminded regularly that it's not for me, it's for you. But those are good articles. I enjoy the articles. Make sure you keep up with Perusall. I think everybody's where they need to be. Let me do a quick check. And please don't let me offend you this morning, but I'm going to look at Grade Center right quick. Just as a reminder, here we go. If you haven't turned in, let me do this right quick. Make sure that you have turned in your case study 28 video, your PowerPoint, because I know you have those. And if you hadn't done your reflection, go ahead and do that when you can before it gets too far distant in your memory. You folks aren't as old as me, but when I sleep, I forget. So don't forget to do your reflection. I'm not, again, everything's due at the end of the semester, but just as a reminder, the further we get away from the time that you did that, the less you remember about it. You have to go back and reread all that stuff. But go ahead and drop your PowerPoint in, because I know you have them. Drop your PowerPoint in, and if you hadn't written your reflection, you might want to get to that pretty quick before you have to go back and reread all that stuff.
And
Good.
Dr. Lamb, this is Jackie.
Yes.
We all go ahead and drop in the PowerPoint, all of us? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and drop your PowerPoint in. I've already seen them. I'll just give you your 100 and we'll move on. It's just so at the end of the semester, we'll have all the things that are in the boxes to give you your grade.
Okay.
I'm glad Jackie asked that clarifying question, because in the past, if one person from our group dropped it in, our professor told us not to all send him the same PowerPoint.
No, this is the Dropbox for your grade.
Okay.
Just put it in Dropbox. Let's see. Let's see. Let me close that. I'm gonna have to open it back up. Let's see if I can just open straight into Blackboard here. Come to assignment Dropbox right here. That's what I'm talking about. Just drop it in the Dropbox for your grade.
Okay. Is there a way to drop it in as Google Slides, or do I have to change it to a PowerPoint?
Let's see.
You can use Google Slides, because that's how I did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you tell me how? Because I couldn't. I had to change mine to a PowerPoint.
Sarah, can you walk us through it while he has that screen up?
I can try. I think you browse computer and then
Yeah, I mean,
I don't remember.
You can open up this way, or do you have a link to your Google Slides? Is there a link?
Yeah, there's a link to the Google Slides.
Just copy and paste it where it says comments.
Okay.
And all I do is I've already seen it, but if I needed to see it, I would just copy and paste that into a window and open it up.
Okay.
So if you have a link, just put it where it says comments.
All right. Because
and
Google
if it's a
Slides
document, you just browse my computer.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
That's all you do. Good.
All right, thank you.
The assignment Dropbox here, let me cancel that. The assignment Dropbox is how I will assign your points for your grade. And so these are the things that are due this semester. There it is. The PowerPoint from all your case studies, your reflections from your case studies, your milestone 5, and your 3 projects. And so you got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You got 12. You got 12 turn-ins this semester. They count equal value. You get to 1,000 points, you make your A. That's my grading system, and everybody knows what they've got.
And I was able to upload it. It was from a Mac, and so it gave me an option to go to my Google Drive. So if you're not on a Mac, that may be why.
Okay. I don't have a Mac. I just downloaded mine as a PowerPoint. I'll just do that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I've already seen them, so I know what they are. So just as long as there's something in there, so that we can show that we actually did some work this semester, or that you did some work and I pretended to. And so then we're good. So that's what these are for. I have drop boxes for all the turn-ins. So we know we have evidence that you did the work. And somebody says, why'd you give this grade or that grade? All right. I don't usually worry. This way I don't worry about grades. You get your own grade. I'm just worried about the quality of your work and the quality of your learning, that you are understanding that 736 is about your journey to self-discovery that's going to help you with your consultancy. Next semester, I'm going to teach you the business. I'm going to teach you researching and quantitative and qualitative next semester. It's more guided input than it is independent learning on your part. There's just things that you have to learn and to be a professional in this business in research. This semester is about finding yourself, finding what's going to help you in your consultancy. It's much more self-directed. And then now you'll get a break again when you have Dr. Jones for the e-learning. You'll get a break again where it's more self-directed. We kind of rotate these things where you don't get 2 semesters of just getting bombarded with information, passive information. You get a semester where you get to kind of explore on your own and be less directed and be a professional. Then you have to go back to me next semester where I just have to beat you up with all the stuff, with all the content. And then you get to go then to e-learning, where where you're more self-directed again. Dr. Hamilton has set the program up where it kind of rotates back and forth, where it doesn't. Hopefully, it doesn't. It keeps you fresh and excited about the program, and you're not passive learners all the time. It's good. It's a good process, I think. Anybody else have anything else that they need to share for the good of the group today? All right, I will post this video under this week's session. I'll put it under case study 12 is where I will put this video, and I will email you the link later on after it processes today.
Guys, when is our Zoom session with Dr. Hamilton?
Hold on, I'll look at my calendar.
You'll have to let me see.
I know it's directly following one of Dr. Lamb's. Is it after the November session, Sarah?
I think so. It's after the October 27th session.
Okay, after October 27th.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is it November 10th or is that
October 27th?
That's our last 2 Zoom sessions. He said he was going to put it after he and I looked at calendars. I thought he put it after the 27th, but now
He did. It's October 27th at 11 o'clock.
I've got an arrow drawn to that day, so I've got on my calendar that he's sessioning with you on the 27th.
I got it. I forgot that we had another Zoom session in October, so I was in my November calendar and I couldn't find it. But I see.
Yeah, we will. So briefly here today is Saturday the 6th. We've done our Zoom session today. Next weekend we'll be in Charlotte for the 13th and 14th. Remember to get more chicken biscuits is the note. You got to get the important stuff. The next week, where we are off that week, I'm going to visit my consultancy group and do a little face-to-face session with them on main campus. 27th is our 3rd Zoom. Then moving over to November, we have the 3rd off. You're at home that week. The 10th is our 4th and final session. And then we have 2 weeks off, and then we will do our final session on the 8th and 9th of December. We'll come together. And that's when you do your presentations that weekend.
okay?
Share all your projects with us. That's why I moved that session to the end. Some people like to have that session sooner, but I put it at the last weekend to give you as much time as possible to create and develop and plan and prepare for your final project presentations. All right. Everybody good with the calendar?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll see you next week in Charlotte then. Everybody have a good week.
Thank you.
All
You
right.
too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.